Okay, so in the last video the headlamp burned out and I decided to replace it with the LED headlamp. This is beautiful headlamp I was able to find on Amazon, but instructions are not very good. First we're gonna turn it on with the external DC power supply. You can use car battery, motorcycle battery, 12-volt battery to do this test. According to the instructions, ground is on this side of the connector, and I'm gonna turn the headlamp so I don't blind you. Turn on high beam first. Doesn't work. So the wiring diagram in the installation manual, it's wrong, so we're gonna just test it. We're gonna move ground to another pin, and voila, it works. This is supposed to be daylight and turn signals. Beautiful. Let's get wire snippers. Since the wiring diagram is not correct and incomplete, I decided to cut all connectors and solder the wires directly. This is more reliable for making permanent connections, but you'll need soldering equipment and basic electrical tools. Remove all this. Perfect. Then we need wire strippers to strip the insulation, wire insulation off. This looks like 20 gauge or 22 gauge, so let's start with 20 gauge and strip off about, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch, maybe 1/4 inch, maybe smaller. Yep, looks like it's 20 gauge. Make sure you test and label each wire on the headlamp and the wires on a motorcycle to make it easier to plug connectors or solder wires later. Okay, yeah, the bulb inside burned out, and it's fairly new, maybe 8 months, a year, I'm not sure, but it should last longer. So we're gonna put this aside. We're not gonna throw it away, just in case. You might need help to hold the other wire because it's difficult to solder and hold both loose wires at the same time. One method is to use vice grips to hold the other wire in place while you're soldering. Make sure to add a short piece of insulating heat shrink tubing before you solder. I prefer to use heat shrink tubes because they're more reliable than the electrical tape. You can order an inexpensive kit from Amazon. It's always handy to have this when you need it. The heat shrink tubing, solder stations, and solder are available on DigiKey, Mouser, and other online electronic stores. It's a little hard to zoom in, so here is a little demo to show you a closer look of this process. Okay, I'm not sure about the polarity for turn signals, but I'm gonna splice this wire here and connect the blinkers in, integrated in this headlamp. So my guess is that this one is positive. Let's give it a try. Unfortunately, the original light switch has only 2 positions to switch between low and high beam lights, so I installed another single pole switch from Cycle Gear to control low beam lights. Here is the wiring diagram. The benefit of not running a low beam light during the day is that the LEDs in the headlamp will not degrade as quickly. The LEDs create a lot of heat, and this will accelerate LEDs' loss of light intensity over time, and especially on hot summer days. Also, The daylight draws only 0.15 amps versus 2 amps for low beam light, so the alternator is not loaded as much, and this should improve the gas mileage a little. Here is another option from Amazon if you want to replace the original light switch on your motorcycle with a new 3-position switch with the blinker and horn control buttons. Installing these brackets is a little tricky, so you have to apply that adhesive, double-sided adhesive tape, and then mount it on the forks. The radius on these brackets is not perfectly aligned with the size of these forks, so you have to squeeze them in. The gap when you place these brackets in, it's very wide, so you have to use these long screws to get it going, but after it snaps into place, the screws are too long, so they did provide shorter screws, so that's what we're gonna use next. Okay, I believe that should do it. Kind of tricky. All these wires should be stuffed inside, although I'm a little concerned about that because there's a heat sink inside for the LEDs, and I don't know what the temperature rating, insulation rating of these wires is, so let's hope for the best. We're gonna stuff all these wires in, make it look clean. See if it works. Daylight looks good. Oh yeah. Turn signals. Beautiful. Nice. May need to align the light later, but I'm happy with the result. It looks pretty neat. Looks really sharp. One thing that I don't like is there's no support bracket on the bottom. But hopefully these side supports should be sufficient to keep it in place. I tighten it really hard, so hopefully it's gonna stay in place. I think it looks sharp, but I'm even more impressed with the light intensity. It's bright, and now I can see at night. I hope this video will help at least one person. We are ready for new adventures. Do you have a feeling that this channel is like a box of chocolate? You never know what's coming next. So stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next one.